In this video, we'll cover the joint life policy pricing. In this case, we have a $20,000 policy for a joint life. So if either or both die, they receive $20,000. There's an 85-year-old and a 95-year-old, so we can see this is a fairly elderly couple. And it pays if one or both dies. So when does it pay? Well, it pays if either dies, but does not pay if they both live, which means it pays if one or both dies, but does not pay if both live. So the probability of paying is 1 minus the probability both live. In that case, if both live, the policy pays nothing, which equals 1 minus L86 over L85. That's the probability of the 85-year-old living, times L96 over L95. That's the probability that the 95-year-old would live. If we look at the mortality table, you'll see that L86 is 15,274. We divide that by L85, 18,032. And then the 95-year-old, L96 is 1017, and you divide that by L95, which is 1518. If you do that math, you get 43.251%, or 0.43251. So that means we will pay the $20,000 about 43% of the time. So how much should we charge for this policy? Well, the premium, this is the net premium. The net premium should equal $20,000 times 0.43251 divided by 1 plus 0.05 or 1.05, because our interest rate is 5%. And that gives you a premium of $8,238.29. Now, was this a good deal? Is what they should have done? Well, we talked about with a younger couple in their 20s, this would not make much sense, because they could just buy 2 term policies, which would be probably not even a penny difference in price. And the reason is, the only difference between this policy and buying 2 term policies is that with the joint life, if both die, they only get $20,000. But if they buy 2 term policies, then if both die, they would actually get $40,000. But because with young couples, the chance of both dying is so low, the 2 premiums are very, very close, almost identical. But with the older couple, there's actually a fairly good probability they would both die. So if this couple just needs the $20,000 for estate purposes or to provide money for their surviving spouse, it may be a good idea for them to buy the joint life, because they can save some money. How much would they save? Well, let's do the pricing for the 2 term policies. The 2 term policies, you price just like you would anything else. You would take D85 times $20,000 divided by 1.05. So the D85, anybody dies at 85 times the face, $20,000 divided by 1 plus the interest rate, which is 5%. And divide that by the L85s. And the L85s, are they going to pay the premium? And then the other term policy would be D95 times $20,000 divided by 1.05, and all of that divided by L95. And when you do the math on this, you get $27.58 times $20,000 divided by 1.05, and all of that divided by L85. L85 is 18,032. And then for the 95-year-old, the D95 is 501 times $20,000 divided by 1.05 divided by the L95s, which is 1518. And when you multiply all that out, you get 6286.47 plus 2913.34. You add those together, it would cost you $91.99.81. Now if you compare that to the joint life would have cost $82.38.29. The difference in those two is $961.52. Now, can you be sure that's the right answer? Well, yes, you can, because remember, the only difference in these is that $20,000 gets paid out, an extra $20,000 gets paid out, they both die. What's the probability that they both die? Well, the probability they both die would be D85 over L85 times D95 over L95, and that probability is 2758 divided by 18,032 times 501 divided by 1518. That's the probability. If we take that probability and multiply it by the $20,000 face and divide it by 1.05, you should get the 961.52 difference. That is the probability that they both die times $20,000 divided by 1 plus interest rates shows you that difference. So for an older couple, if $20,000 is all they need in all situations, they don't want the $40,000 even if they both die, then they should save the $961 and just buy the joint policy. But for a much younger couple, they should probably buy the term policy, the two term policies, because it won't save them probably any more than a penny. And then if they both die, they'll get the extra amount. Thank you.